Hello, everybody. Welcome to Module 5. So today I want to go over some content for this module, and then we're going to talk about some of your assignments. So just as kind of a review, of course, this class is Methods of Teaching Language Arts, and we've already looked at an overview of what the language arts consist of. We then had a module where we talked about speaking and listening, and all of you actually taught a lesson where you modeled that listening and how to get kids to discuss. We had a module on viewing and visualizing, and that's visualizing and interpreting visuals. And so you guys did a great job in that. And then our last module, I had you look at UFly, and I wanted you to look at a scripted program so you could see how, even if we have a scripted program, we can integrate the language arts within that construct. So today we're going to talk about another language arts, and we're going to be looking at writing across the curriculum. Writing is probably one of my favorite subjects to teach. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what we're going to be looking at today. So one of the big parts of your reading today is going to be an article by Joan Sedita. And Joan Sedita did something. She created the writing rope, which is aligned with Scarborough's reading rope that we discussed. And so in this, she looked at the writing rope and said that writing is composed of multiple strands, and these strands build into a skilled writer instead of a skilled reader. So the first thing I want to do is I want to look at these strands. Here's an overview of the writing rope, and you can see how it is similar to the reading rope, except instead of having a skilled reader, we want a skilled writer. And as we look at this, I want us to think about what are the reading and writing connections, and when we connect those concepts, how it can strengthen both reading and writing. So we're going to look at each of these strands. So there are 5 strands. The strands are critical thinking, syntax, text structure, writing craft, and transcription. So let's look at each one. First, we have critical thinking. So when you are teaching writing with critical thinking, that involves the idea of generating ideas. And I would encourage all of you to look at the writing standards for the state wherever you're at, or the country. I know we have people from other countries. And almost all writing strands, all writing curriculum and standards talk about that kids need to go through the writing process. They need to be able to generate ideas. They then need to draft, revise, edit, and then they need to have the opportunity to share their work. So generating ideas is a part of critical thinking. Gathering information, doing your research is a part of critical thinking. And then finally, organizing, drafting, and revising, which is that writing process. So critical thinking is a necessary step in that strand. Then we have syntax. So syntax has to do with grammar and syntactic awareness. And we're actually going to have an entire module next week on grammar. But grammar is one part of writing instruction. It also goes into sentence elaboration, and lastly, punctuation. And so this is the syntax is the part about the grammar. So if you're thinking about the writing process, this is going to be that editing and revising section. Then we have text structure. So text structure is the type of writing that you're going to do. And in almost every state standards, kids are required to do 3 polished pieces. And those pieces are generally a narrative piece, which is a literary piece, an informational piece, and an opinion piece. Now, within those pieces, there are organizational patterns. If it is a narrative piece, it's going to have a similar organizational pattern. You're going to have characters, setting, problem, solution, and you're going to have events. However, those nonfiction, those informational and opinion pieces have different kinds of text structure. It could be cause and effect. It could be problem and solution. It could be compare and contrast. It could be chronological order. So it's important that students know the organizational patterns for their writing. And as we're going to talk about, that also helps with their reading. And then also paragraph structure. How are we structuring those paragraphs to make coherent sense of our writing? Then we have writing craft. This is kind of that revising aspect. This is when we teach kids how to use word choice. And we also teach them about audience and purpose. So depending on who our audience is, the type of writing that we do will change. If I'm writing to the provost of Southeastern, my tone and how I write will be very different than if I'm texting my husband or one of my friends. So knowing the audience in writing really helps us to know the structure, and we need to know the purpose. Is our purpose to entertain? Is our purpose to persuade? And then it gets into some of those literary devices that makes our writing more interesting and aligned with our craft. Then we have transcription, and I know this is a big part of the NILD framework, but transcription is important. And so that has to do with two parts of transcription. We have this actual spelling, but also that handwriting and keyboarding automaticity. Those are both parts of transition. So all of that together, I'm going to kind of go back here, makes up that writing rope. And to have a skilled writer, they need to be able to address critical thinking, have correct syntax, text structure, writing craft, and lastly, transcription. So in this module, besides an article and a video about the writing rope, you have an article that's about enhancing reading and writing skills. And in that article, it talks about how reading and writing share cognitive processes. And it talks about how the cognitive processes of vocabulary, background knowledge, syntax, text structure are both cognitive processes that you need for reading and writing. And so the whole crux of the article is you really need to be teaching that reading and writing connection and explicitly share with students how those thinking processes are the same in both. So integrated instruction helps students make explicit connections between skills learned in reading and in writing. So we need, just like in reading, we have to have explicit instruction. In writing, we have to have explicit instruction where we demonstrate writing strategies by using mentor text, think alouds, sample sentences, and oral language plays a key part in this. And we've already talked about oral language. With oral language, we need opportunities to discuss what we're writing, to do sentence rehearsal, to have collaborative talk. All of this strengthens idea development and clarity of our writing. We need systematic instruction supports transfer. So students begin to use strategies independently when they apply the reading strategies that are taught by you. So some of the key points that article talks about is that gradual release of responsibility. And we talked about this when we talked about the oral communication, where we're going to do model, we're going to have joint construction, we're going to have independent practice. And students benefit from writing about what they read. That deepens their comprehension. That's another thing to think about. And lastly, integration of writing and reading supports diverse learners by reinforcing concepts through multiple modalities. So that's really important. So that's a little bit of summary of that article. Now I want to get to your assignments this week, and then I'll talk about that. So I'm going to go to our module. And let me go here and look at this. Here we go. Okay, so here's our module 4, not module 8, sorry, we are at module 5. That module is writing across the curriculum. So we're going to look at our aims for the module. So we want to identify and explain, Joan, Sadida's writing rope, how they contribute to a skilled writer. I want you to design an evidence-based writing lesson that incorporates strands of the writing rope. It doesn't have to be all of them. Matter of fact, it's probably just going to be one. You need to demonstrate effective writing instruction, evaluate your instruction through a post-reflection, and then integrate the other 5 language arts. So that's kind of our overview or our objectives. As I go to the Learn section, we have here for our reading, we have some articles, the writing rope, the strands that are woven into skilled writing, how to teach a writing mini lesson, and then the article I was talking to you about enhancing reading and writing instruction. There is also a video there's a video that talks about the writing rope by the author of that created the writing rope, and I was able to hear her this summer at a Florida education conference. So that has about the writing rope. And I also have a video of some really good examples of using a writer's workshop and a teacher that models that very, very well. So that can give you some ideas. So you have 2 assignments this week. We do have a reflection. So you are to read the articles, to consider the videos, and then after doing that, after watching all of that, you need to summarize the key components of the writing rope, what strands stood out to you and why, provide some concrete examples or ideas for classroom application. So it'll be about a 200-word summary of your insights to the class. Oh, I'm sorry. Then you're going to post so you'll have your original post, right? And then you're going to respond to one other person's response. So engage in at least one peer's post. You have that discussion post, and then the other kind of big assignment that you have, this is almost exactly like what we did in the module 2 on oral speaking and listening. Going to do the same thing. You're going to develop a writing lesson. And when you think about the writing lesson, I want you to think small. You're not going to teach, I'm going to go over some examples, but you need to just think about a specific strand and even a component within that strand. You need to have your objectives, materials, those instructional steps. If you need differentiation, how will you assess? And then you need to record a video. And this video is going to be short. It says 10 to 15 minutes. It might only be 5 to 10 minutes because it's a short mini lesson about writing. And then you'll have your reflection. In your reflection, you're going to talk about how your instructional choices support writing development, how your approach reinforces writing to read connections. So again, there's 3 parts. And I think when we did this module 2, some people forgot some of the parts. There's 3 parts. Part 1, the lesson plan. Part 2, the video. And then part 3, the reflection. So you have those 3 parts of the lesson. The last thing I want to do is, real quick, I want to go over with you for the writing lesson, some ideas that you could do for that. So when you think about a writing lesson, so I'm going to try to make it bigger here. Let's fast forward here. Sorry about that. Here we go. Okay. So that writing mini lesson, again, it can be short, sometimes it may only be 10 minutes long with a clear teaching point. It should be based on student needs. Now, in this example that you're doing, it may not be based on student needs, but in the classroom, it needs to be based on their needs. You need to look at their writing, and it needs to be focused on what the student's writing shows that they need. It needs to be explicitly modeled, showing the skill, using think alouds, using mentor text, using students' writing. You need guided practice where the students try it out. And then you need opportunities for transfer. So students need to immediately use that in their own writing. So it's kind of this structure of connection. So we're going to have a teaching point, we're going to model, practice, and then we want that transfer. I just put lots of different ideas that you could do for a writing lesson. You could only talk about good leads, or you could talk about sensory details, adding transition words. How do we expand a sentence? How do we use quotation marks? How do we organize our paragraph or develop ideas? How do we revise? How do we edit? But it needs to be small. One thing I see, one mistake I see in a lot of teachers is they just say that, okay, my writing lesson is I'm going to tell them that we're going to write about what we did on summer vacation, and students write. That's not a writing lesson. That every time with students that I would do a polished piece of writing, it would probably take me a good month to get that polished piece all the way through. Even at the college level, one thing that I've learned, I all big assignments, I have my students turn in drafts. They turn in rough drafts. They turn in parts of that writing process. Number one, it helps with cheating. It helps with not using AI. And I can give feedback along the way. And since I started doing that at the college level and even the graduate level, work is so much better. And that just makes sense, doesn't it? And so those lessons need to be small with feedback. So again, you have some reading. You have you're going to be reading quite a couple, about 2 or 3 articles about the writing rope, and then there's another article about how to integrate reading and writing. You have 2 assignments. You're going to for your discussion post. There is you're going to be writing and summarizing about the writing rope, and just really concentrating on one strand. Then you're going to do a mini lesson with students where you'll write a lesson plan, do a short micro teaching lesson that you'll record, and then have a reflection and summary. So that is all for this week. Again, this course is about the language arts. And so we've looked at a lot of the language arts. We still have grammar. We still going to be talking about reading. We still have a few more to do. And then we have one kind of big project at the end where you're going to be looking at student data and developing intervention groups and centers around the 6 language arts. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. And I did want to remind you, I do have open office hours on Thursdays if anybody wants to pop in. Thank you.